Welcome back to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay in Washington, D.C., and joining us again from Amherst, Massachusetts is Jim Crotty. He's associated with the Perry Institute there, and he teaches at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. Thanks for joining us again, Jim.
Thank you.
So let me read you a quote from your own paper and then ask you to explain it. There's been a substantial increase in the market share held by a small number of the largest firms in important financial markets in the last quarter century. That's enabled these firms to use substantial market power to increase revenue, profit, and rainmaker bonuses. While speculative false value is the main source of money for bonuses, the oligopoly-based market power is also a significant contributor to the money pool that feeds excessive rainmaker compensation. So Jim, first of all, start with this idea. What is false value?
The income that's the source ultimately of the bonuses of the rainmakers in financial firms is the rising value of financial assets. So when the stock market's going up and the value of mortgage-backed securities are going up and the value of complex, bizarre securities based on mortgages like collateralized debt obligations are going up, then everyone's making money. So all the asset values are rising. Any securities that you have, that you own, any of the mortgage-related securities that these institutions owned, their value is rising because there's a speculative bubble. Everyone's becoming more optimistic. Everyone is borrowing money to buy assets. There's no problems in those variables that influence the value of these products. For mortgage-backed securities, that would be interest rates. Interest rates are low. Housing prices are rising, there are no defaults, and so on and so forth. This is not permanent. This comes from the entire financial system being excessively optimistic based on temporary debt-fueled speculative moves. So the value that's created is short run. It will go away as soon as the perfect conditions end. But this is the value which fuels the revenues of financial firms and fuels the pools that bonuses come from.
Everyone knows the bubble will burst. You just try to make as much money as you can before it bursts and try to get out before it bursts and let some other sucker pay for it.
Everybody tries to make as much money while it's still there, which they do by borrowing more and speculating more. I mean, the financial institutions were responsible for the largest rise in borrowing over the past 20 or 25 years or so. In 1980, financial firm debt was about 20% of gross domestic product, the size of the economy, but it was 120% by 2007. So it's not just that you're riding the financial boom. By riding the financial boom, you're extending and creating and energizing the financial boom. And of course it has to come to an end at some point, but when it comes to an end, you don't give the bonuses back. That's the key thing. You don't give it back.
Now talk about the importance of how these big Wall Street firms control so much market share. What's the consequences of that?
The consequence of that is that they don't compete with each other vigorously along all dimensions of financial market activity. So for example, private equity funds charge 2% of the value of the assets that they control and get 20% of the profits. The same thing is true for hedge funds. They don't undercut each other on these prices. 3 or 4 commercial banks are the principal initiators of the syndicated loan market for large businesses, and therefore they don't really compete with each other on prices. So the lack of competition means that the prices that they can charge are much higher than they would be if there was a genuinely competitive market. This then adds, in addition to all these speculative gains, which I refer to as false values, which Adair Turner, who is the head of Britain's Financial Services Authority, called illusory values. They're just bubbles in the boom. These two things together create the money pools that feed the bonus operation until the bonus operation leads to a disaster.
Now, they know this disaster's coming, so they must also plan for the disaster. And they have to plan at the political level, because in the final analysis, if their rescue is going to be government bailout, they better make sure there's somebody there that can accomplish it for them and to some extent get public opinion on side for it. So what is that in relationship to where Obama is at? We know how much Obama was financed his campaign by Wall Street. How much planning goes into all of this?
It's hard to make a judgment from the outside. I would suggest that it isn't just that the Congress and the Treasury Department and the Fed and the administrations of recent decades have been stuffed and stocked with either people from Wall Street themselves or people who believed that Wall Street needed to get what it wanted, or people who were getting so much money from Wall Street that they were prepared to believe this. It's also true that when you let the financial institutions get as big as our financial institutions are, they're enormous, that when they, by their own profit-seeking and bonus-seeking activities, bring themselves to the verge of a complete financial collapse, the government really has no choice but to rescue them. If they do, it's blackmail. It's structural blackmail. If they don't rescue them, then we could get a Great Depression. So they have to rescue them. So that they are structurally blackmailed into rescuing them, and they are seduced, convinced, paid, believe the economists that in the bubble leading up to the need for a rescue, that the downturn isn't going to come.
Well, in your paper, I mentioned this in the first segment of our interview, I'll quote it again. You say this: the Obama administration has shown no inclination to tighten the leash on financial firms or to rein in the bizarre bonus system. So in the next segment of our interview, let's talk about what should that leash look like, what's on the table in terms of financial regulation, and what if you were able to write it, what would you write? So please join us for the next segment of our interview with Jim Crotty.